Tell me what you're trying to find in this problem.
The width and then the length.
Read through and find where the question part is. What is the question asking
What
you?
is the area?
So we're trying to find area. What comes after that? Do you remember? Kinda. There's something else? So I'm going to talk through this one. This comes from something in the previous class in developmental math. What is the question asking us to find?
The area.
The area. How do you find area of something?
18 times 20.
Why are you doing 18 times 20?
Because length times breadth.
Length times, I heard you say breadth
Width.
or width. They mean the same thing. Length times width. Finish it up.
Because
Length times width equals?
space.
Space or the area, yeah.
Yeah.
So you remembered the formula from developmental math that said area equals length times width. So I heard you say we do 18 times 20, which you figured out equals
360.
360. I know we were trying to figure out what comes after. Do you remember? 360. 360. It's not feet because 360 feet is a distance. 360 feet would be like from here to there is 360 feet. Oh, you had said earlier area is the space. So there's something different you label area with. It's not feet, it's... Think about if you've ever looked for like an apartment or a house. When they tell you the area...
Square.
There we go. 360, you could write out square feet, or we use that little that thing, that exponent, to say feet squared. The reason I wanted to start off with this problem is this line right here, what you gave me. We've called this a formula before. This formula is an equation. It's written with letters. Why do we use letters here?
How do we use letter for what?
Why did we use letters in this equation?
To tell you which is the length and what's the width of it.
So-
what's the equal the area.
Yeah. Just to say that this one here represents the length, this one here represents the width, and then when you multiply them, it gives you the area. What we're looking at today is going to have something similar to this right here, and it has to do with using these letters. Eventually, we ended up using numbers, but as a general rule, we said area always equals length times width. There's a reason we use these letters here, and that's what we're looking at today. So in today's lesson, we are starting Unit 2, and Unit 2 is going to start off with us learning what these variables are. The objective is going to say I can use variables to represent real-world situations. We have not seen this word here before. Does anyone know what a variable is? I'll get.
Different shape.
It's what?
It's a different shape.
A different shape?
No.
No. I'll give you a clue though. You've already seen them today. It's kind of like a label. You already saw some in that first problem. We're going to start off by talking about what a variable is. A variable, whoop, where is it? There it is. A variable is just a letter. So in that very first problem, you told me area equals length times width. You said A equals L times W. A, L, and W were all variables. In math, you use letters anytime there is a number you don't know. So a variable is going to be a letter that stands for an unknown number. So where have you seen variables before? You literally already saw some today. Why were we using those variables?
To find the particular number.
To find that number for our area. So we used variables in this right here. This is a formula. So even before this lesson, you saw variables. We just weren't calling them variables. Anytime you were using a formula, though, formulas use letters in them to represent numbers you don't know. So when I tell you the area of any rectangle is length times width, in that sentence, I'm not giving you any numbers. I'm just telling you the area equals length times width. They're using those letters to represent numbers we don't know. Then when I do give you the numbers, like in that last problem, you can change those letters to the numbers to find your area. What we're doing today is going to involve variables. Do we have an idea of what a variable is? We're feeling okay? Uh-huh. So if you've ever seen letters in math before, today is the day. Today's the day where we're starting that. Now, our problems today are going to ask us to write an expression. We've seen this word before when we were doing order of operations last week, and I asked you to write a math problem to represent a story problem. You were writing expressions. We said before this lesson that an expression is just a group of numbers and operations. What are operations? There are,
PEMDAS.
it goes back to PEMDAS. Yep, there's 4 operations in math. What are the 4 operations? Multiplication, division, add, subtract. There we go. So when we were talking about expressions earlier, you were writing math problems that had numbers and operations in them. So you were giving me stuff that looked like this, maybe looked like this to represent those story problems. We're adding in the last part of that today, and that is variables. So another example of an expression could be something like this, 7 plus y. It's the same idea. It's got a number, an operation, and a variable. A letter which is a variable. So what we're doing today, we said we're going to use variables, we're going to use letters, to help us represent word problems. You are already representing word problems with stuff like this. We're just adding in this extra piece of using a variable if you don't know something in the word problem. So for example, for our first problem, we've got Samantha and does your paper say 2 combine? Well, Samantha and Denise combine their students for an activity. And it's asking me to write an expression to find how many students are doing the activity. I didn't give you any numbers in this situation, right? So we got to think a little critically. If we've got me and Denise combining students, let's start off with what operation is that describing?
Students with the S for students, right?
You are not describing operations. I think
Addition.
addition. If we're combining stuff, combining is telling me we want to add. Now you're jumping, you're not telling me operations, you're telling me a variable. We figured out we want to add. What do we want to add? You said
Student with the S.
S for students, so you're already thinking about like what variables we need. In this problem, we're adding, what are we adding?
Samantha student and Dennis student.
And I like how you said it. You didn't just say Samantha and Denise, you said Samantha's students and Denise's students together. So if I wanted to write an expression, let's put that using algebra. So you said we want to add Samantha's students. What could we use for that? This is what you were telling me earlier.
S.
S. So we want Samantha's students And you already told me we're combining means add. So we want Samantha students plus
D. And Denise.
D. What's D stand for?
Denise.
Denise, like the woman herself, Denise?
Huh?
You're laughing.
The number,
Francis. Ooh. Keep going.
the number of the students.
Yeah, the number of Denise's students. So what we're running into right there is the second part of this. When you're using variables, you have to tell me what they represent. And when you do it, you want to be specific. So we don't want to just say S is Samantha, D is Denise, because you're not adding my body with Denise's body, right? You're adding. You told me Denise is all right at first. I heard you say D represents.
Denise students.
That's not what you said before. You put something at the beginning. Do you remember?
Students.
You said the number of Denise's students. So now so now I can see I'm adding how many students Denise has with what? What's S going to represent?
The number of students.
Yeah. So S will represent the number of Samantha students. Ooh. Hopefully you have more room on your paper than I do. Okay. Now there's one thing I want to ask here. You used S plus D, right? Why did you choose S and D?
You can choose any number and add it later.
You can choose any letter you want. So you did exactly what I like to do. I like to pick letters that look like what they're representing. I have a question. Could someone write S plus S down?
Is it Samantha plus students?
Well, I don't know what they were thinking. Let's say S plus S down. What would the question be you want to ask if they write S plus S down?
I think Denise to Sarah.
We want to ask, what does S represent? If you see someone write S plus S down, you want to ask, what does S represent? What if they write S plus S down and they tell you S represents the number of Samantha students?
And the other one say S for the number of students.
Well, what do you think? Can I say S represents the number of students I have, and S also represents the number of students Denise has?
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
Okay. Just have to make it clear on what.
You have to make it a different letter. If I'm using the same letter here, that means it represents the same person, the same thing. These are different things. Denise and I don't necessarily have the same students. Right now I have 3 and she has 0. So they can be different numbers. If they can be different numbers, you need different letters. And you also need to say what they represent over here. Even I heard, was it you who said, like, maybe it's Samantha and Sarah? If this had been Sarah or Susanna, because Susanna's a person here. Maybe me and Susanna are combining our students. What would I have needed to do? S can still be my students, but then for Susanna, what would you want to use for Susanna? C, X, N, A, literally any letter but the letter S. Because S, I already took S. S is for me. So you would need to use a different letter. It doesn't matter what her name starts with, but she would need to be something different. You guys did awesome with that. So the question asked, write an expression. We've got our expression. We've got what the letters represent in it. The second part says, if Samantha has 12 students and Denise has 6 students, how many students are doing the activity?
28.
I hear 28. Tell me how you're getting 28.
12 plus 6.
12 plus 6? Why 12 plus 6?
That's the number of Samantha students and the number of Denise students.
Yeah, so I hear you saying that's the number of Samantha students, so 12. And then that's the number of Denise students. So 6. You just did something there. You took our expression and you changed S
The number.
to a number and you changed.
Use the number.
There's a math word for that. In math, when you are replacing a variable, and the variable is just
A letter.
the letter. When you're replacing the variable or the letter, with a number. In math, we call that substitution. Substitution is like substitute teacher. If I wasn't here one day, they would substitute me with a substitute. They would replace me with someone else. But I'm here, so there's no substitute. But substitute, just think of this idea of like replacing. You're replacing something with something else. So over here, that's what you did. You replaced our letters with these numbers. Now when you add 12 and 6, you get 18. So to answer the question, how many students are doing the activity? We're just going to say 18 students. This part here, questions like this, you guys already know how to do. What I want to see from you is this idea of using this expression and using that to show your work here. So if you use the expression s plus d, somewhere show me I'm replacing the s and the d with these numbers to find my answer. What we're doing today, by the way, using variables to represent stuff, this is like the foundation for algebra. So this is going to be a skill we keep working on until you guys are done with me. But it's exciting. It means we're starting to get to some of the algebra stuff. I've got one more example we'll do together, and then I'm going to have you try some. And we're going to do it as soon as I clean this board. All right. So we've got Israel makes $4.50 an hour working as a waiter. Write an expression to represent how much money Israel makes. Just looking at part A, tell me what you all are thinking.
Money, for money.
So you're already thinking what our variable could be.
And I for Israel, or I don't know how to do
The first question I asked you for that last one, do you remember what the first question I asked was? The first thing I asked is, what operation is this describing? If you figure out the operation first, you'll figure out what that variable is, because it's going to be the thing you don't know. Can we figure out what operation this is describing? Division? Tell me why you think division.
Because why can I put up for represent how much it makes? Like, you're going to divide, if it's working 7 days a week, probably 8 hours, divided by.
So when you say $4.50 an hour, you want to divide that by how many hours he works? You make $4.50 an hour. What does that mean?
You'll multiply that by the number of days that he works.
You would multiply this by the number of
Days.
So if he works 1 day, he makes $4.50?
Well, by the number of hours that he would work for that day.
Oh, okay. So we would multiply it by the number of hours he works. If your boss tells you you're going to make $4.50 an hour, that means you're making $4.50 every hour you work. So if he was working a lot of hours, right? You're talking about like during the whole week, we would want to multiply the money he's making times the number of hours he works. Do we agree on multiplication? Okay. So if we're saying it's going to be multiplication, what do we need to multiply? We need to multiply what by what?
4.50
Mhm.
times X.
We want to multiply 450. You said times X?
Well, money, because money, the M.
You got money for M? You said X. What were you thinking X represents?
We haven't know the number yet.
We don't know the number of...
Hours or money, me.
Oh, you can put an hour times H per hour equals
There you
money
go.
for M.
You told me a moment ago we're multiplying the 450 times how many hours he works. If you know those words, then you know exactly what that variable is. We can use X, we can use M, we can use H. Remember, it doesn't matter the letter, but what does matter is what it represents. So if we want to say 450, I'm going to use parentheses here. 450 times, I heard you give me X first. It doesn't matter what letter you use, but we have to say X represents
Hours.
hours. Be more specific. What about the hours? Do you remember?
Hours you work.
the hours you worked. I'm just going to put number in front. The number of hours, that does not look like an H. Hours, who is it? Israel works. Something like that. Again, you could use X, you can use H, you can use M, literally whatever letter you like. But what should be the same is something like this. We're saying it represents the hours. Now we've got an expression. I've got a couple more questions. I chose to write it with parentheses. How else could I write it?
Dot X.
So 450 times X like that. How else could we write it?
A star. Where's that little
Mhm.
thing?
How's that look to you? You're laughing at it. Why are you laughing at it? It says 450 times X. Do you see a problem with this? It looks confusing, right? I've got like XX here. You think back to last class when I talked about all these different ways we write multiplication, and I said the further you get in math, the less you use that multiplication sign. This is exactly why, because this looks very confusing. So I think we use the parentheses probably the most. That dot also works. The one other way you can see it, and probably the way you most commonly see it, is in math when you are trying to show you're multiplying a number and a variable together. The most common way you see it is like this. They're just right next to each other. Nothing is between them. It just says 450x. And we got to know when you see that, it means 450 times x. So this is probably the most common way to see it. That said, all of these mean the same thing. I would avoid that whole XX thing though. We've got our expression. How are we feeling about that? Good? Okay. The second part of this, I'm going to come up and just change this one. There we go. Second part says, write an expression to represent how much money Israel makes if he also made $125.65 in tips this week.
So a week or W. Wait, I meant $225.65. Take for tip.
So I'm gonna, you keep
So-
jumping to the
so-
variable. I'm
so-
gonna start us off in the same spot as last time. What operation would we want to use here?
Division.
Each day, like times a day.
Times a day? What are we
By-
multiplying? I'm hearing multiplying, I'm hearing dividing. Tell me what you're thinking. What do you want to multiply by? What do you want to divide?
You divide 125 divided by 4 to give you exact money made. Yeah.
We're trying to find how much total money he's making.
Oh, with the four dot 50
Mhm.
number. Right?
So he's making this much an hour.
Okay.
What else do we know about how much total money he's making?
Okay.
Where else is he making money?
From tipping.
From the tips.
Yeah.
So you said he's making $4.50 an hour, and then he's making $1. I keep saying this is $1. This is $125.65 in tips. We're trying to write an expression for how much total money he makes.
So 125.55 tip with the T next to it makes it tips, right? No? Like, like I see people like do this. Like, let's say for example, it has like a T, it presents the tip next to it, right? Or am I wrong?
You're still going back to variables, and I'm not asking about variables yet.
Like, divided by.
Step away from the algebra then. Think for a second in real life. If you are a waiter, you know you make this much money an hour. Someone also gives you this much money in tips. If you're trying to figure out how much money you made that week, what are you going to do?
Okay.
Well,
This
because,
125,
if
this
I-
125, is it the tips?
That's the tips.
Not
You
just
could-
for the tips.
Because if I was working and I'm trying to figure out how much I was making, I put $4.50 times age per hour.
Mm-hmm.
Well, plus with the tip, 100.
There you go.
Yeah.
You said it. You said plus.
Yeah,
If you're getting this much tips,
no,
you want to add it to how much money you're making. This is how much money you're making every hour. These are your tips. You've got to add in those tips to figure out how much total money. I kept using that word total as a clue. To find the total money you're making, we need to add in the tips. That operation is addition. So you just went ahead, I think, and you gave me everything. What are we adding here? We're adding the tips with what?
I'll use the same thing as that one for.
The thing up here.
Yeah.
We already figured out this represents how much total money you make after working a certain amount of hours. So we're taking our 450x, and then what are we doing?
And plus 125.
Yeah. Adding in our tips of 125.65. Now, you kept wanting to put a variable here. Are we multiplying these tips by something? No, that's already like a total, right? That's the total amount of tips you got. So we don't need to multiply it by anything. We don't need a variable here. We're saying we've got the 450 you make each hour. So to figure out the total amount of money you make, you're multiplying your 450 times how many hours you worked. And then after that, you're going to add in your tips. So here, there's no more variables we're using. There's no other variable I have to define. If you're confused with how we're getting this, I would write down in words. What this means is what? This first part here says,
4.5x is how much you're making per hour.
yep. So 450 times the number of hours. That's how much he's making total from the hours he's working.
Yeah.
Plus, what is this?
The tip.
Yeah, the total of the tips. This is the expression, but if you're having a hard time seeing where that's coming from, I would write down this line to help future you. Once we've got our expression, now we can use it to figure out stuff. So that last question says, how much money did Israel make with tips if he worked 10 hours this week?
So we already got it. So 4.50 times 10.
Why are you saying 450 times 10?
Because he worked 10 hours in the week for the week.
Yeah, so we figured out the number of hours he worked this week is 10. So I can replace that x with 10. I used the word replace, but what's that word we learned today? Carlos knows it's on his paper.
Variable. No? Am I wrong?
It's not, you're not wrong that x is a variable, but this idea of replacing, Francis got it, is substitution. So we can substitute x, which is the number of hours he works, for the 10 hours. And then what else do you want to do?
And then add with the tip.
Yeah.
How much also.
So if he makes $4.50 an hour and he works 10 hours, when you multiply that, how much money is that?
$45.
Nice. That is why waiters do not get paid enough. Plus the tips.
$170 and 56 cents.
Nice. And I like how you already put that into money. You said $170.65.
What, actual waiters make that type of money like that?
I mean, waiters, I know that base pay, that pay per hour is very, very low, which is why you're supposed to tip your waiters. Is because they need tips to survive. I had a roommate who was a waiter for a bit. Tipping your waiter well can put them in a very good mood. How are we feeling about this one here? Okay now? We've got two more to look at. So I think just more practice always helps. The next one says with a partner. Again, we're a class of 3. So what I would love to have is one of you come up and kind of be like the record keeper at the board, but it is not the person at the board's job to do everything. The person at the board can turn around and say, guys, what do you think? What should I write down? What's my first step? What do you think the operation is? Stuff like that. Can I have the one volunteer for our writer,
I'm not writing this down.
which is fair. Carlos wrote last time. So my other table. Francis, thank you so much. So I'm not joking. It's not her job to do all the work. She's going to turn around and ask you gentlemen what you think we need to do for this one. You want to read it for us first, though?
So we give her daughter an allowance of $2 every week plus 50 cents for each load. Write an expression to represent how much money her daughter gets during the week.
Addition.
Addition, tell us why.
Because she gives her daughter $2 plus 50 cents. So she's gonna add it $2 plus 50 cents.
What do you two think? Do you agree we need some addition here?
Yeah. So $2 plus
50 cents.
a week. No, I'm trying to figure that out.
So you want to start writing, and we can always adjust it. But they said $2. Remember what you said, Io?
Every week with the W, right?
Ooh.
Every week.
Is that where you want it?
Well,
No,
I would have just put $2
times
without the
plus
0, and you
two.
put W next to it.
There you go.
And after that, plus with the 50 cents.
That's for each load of laundry she does.
Yeah, each.
So
Yeah.
that would be 50 cents times whatever, however
Yeah.
much laundry she does.
Mhm. I like it. Times the load of laundry she's done. All right. And then I'm going to come back to you because the very first thing you said is still missing. Do you remember the first thing you said we want to do?
Addition.
Yeah. All right. So we've got $2 W plus 50 cents times L. I'm seeing some variables. There's something else we still need to do.
Allowance, no.
Gentlemen who are sitting, look up at one of the examples we did. For that first part, what's missing?
The $2 every week, not every day.
What's missing?
So
Oh, number of the
What is that?
hour fee.
So what do we still have to do?
The each load of laundry.
Tell me what those variables represent. So I see.
W is for
the allowance,
week. Oh yeah, I forgot. So W is for week, how much you make.
Let's pause there. W is for, what about the week?
no,
The week that she makes $2 every week, I guess.
No, she gives her daughter $2 every week, not every day. So it's like $2 one a week. Like in a week, she gives her daughter $2.
Mm-hmm. So what does W represent here then?
Nothing.
You are on the right idea, but that's not what W represents. Go back up to the story. What does it say? That was the part you were saying.
I said every week per 50 cents for each load of laundry she
Just
does.
focus on the week. You're jumping around. So for W right now, what does the word problem say?
I said allowance for 2 weeks every
Good.
week
Read through that again. Allowance.
of $2 every week.
Mhm. So we've
total
got
allowance-
2W. So that's $2 times what?
50 cents.
What would you be multiplying that $2 by?
W.
Times X.
We already used W. We don't need another letter.
Oh,
Give it to me in words. If I say you're getting $2 every week, that means you're multiplying the $2 times
The 50 cents.
No, the number of weeks.
There we go. W would be the number of weeks.
Weeks they give us the money.
This is gonna.
The number of weeks. Okay, I see another letter there. This might be easier now. L, what does L represent?
Laundry.
Laundry. The number of laundry she did.
There you go, the number of loads of laundry she
Loads
did.
of laundry she did.
Now here, this is very lovely. There is one thing you have in your expression that's not necessary. I'm wondering if you realized what it was earlier.
The multiplication.
Ooh, okay. When you say the multiplication, what multiplication?
The 50 cent. No. So it's going to be like 50 cents times 3 little of weeks.
We're just
So
still on the first
I
part
know I'm
there.
just gonna, like the total of the 50 cents, then you add it to the week. So it's gonna be addition. That is
You're still reading part B. We haven't read part B yet. I'm just looking at 2W plus 50 cents times L. What does 2W mean? Like if you had to put that into words.
Week.
She makes $2 a week.
So what type of math is right there? 2W.
2 times W.
2 times W. So you wrote 2W for the first one, but then 50 cents times L for the second one. So when you said multiplication,
So $2 W.
so 2W.
$2, yeah, W. Plus
Mhm.
50 cents L next to it.
So you can get them next to each other like that. There's one other thing. So we said L is the number of loads she did. When we read through number 3, do we know how many loads of laundry she did?
No, she
Not part B. Just part the top part of number 3.
Hey, well,
Do we know how many loads of laundry she did?
yeah 3.
it says dirty.
Nope. Just I'm saying up to this point. You have read part B, but we're not at part B yet.
No, she haven't.
We don't know.
No.
Do we know how many weeks have gone by?
No.
Read part A.
Right. It says during the week.
So what's that mean?
It's like a
7
7-day
days.
week. Wait, 7 day a week?
During the week means how many weeks?
1.
1 week. So what you've got is fine. It's what it says is correct, right? It says $2 times how many weeks she's been doing her chores, plus 50 cents times each load of laundry. Yeah, Francis figured it out, but we don't. Oh wait, what are you doing?
T plus the weeks times 50 cents for each load of laundry.
Tell me why you changed it to addition.
Because the first part would be addition.
$2 every week.
Right.
So if 10 weeks have gone by, how much money has she made right there?
You said
Yeah.
10 weeks?
10.
You said 10 weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying, just
$20.
pretend. How do you do that? What math?
2 times 10?
So it is multiplication. That's not what we need to change. We had already figured out it's multiplication. If it's just asking about 1 week, do we need to multiply that $2 by anything?
No, we just $2 plus
Yeah, the
50,
1 week.
50
Mhm.
times.
Yeah.
1 day. Yes. 1
So
week.
we can just say, yeah, $2.
Plus
Yep, plus 50 cents times our load of
50
laundries.
times.
So you guys gave me a bonus variable. So I was like, ooh, I let you do it. But here it's not actually necessary. I'm gonna clean up what you've got a little bit. When it comes to writing expressions, I did not say it earlier, but when you are writing expressions, you normally do not see dollar signs in them. So this right here is what like the ideal final answer would be. Again, there's nothing what you're saying is correct. This is how you would usually see it though, without the dollar signs, the cent signs, everything like that. I promise the second part's gonna be easier. So I've been dying to talk through that second part. What's that second part say?
Isadora did 3 loads of laundry this week. So, she multiplied.
Wait, you stopped reading. If her daughter did 3 loads of laundry this week, how much?
Does J.O. Adora?
Yeah.
So 2W plus 50 cents.
Times 50
Times
cents
3.
times 3.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Times 3. $2.5.
Keep going with it.
Equals, right?
Is it equals to,
Wait, you're 50. Yeah.
That's it? Or?
Is there more you can do with that?
The 3 loads of this week. That's like add all total now.
Yeah. So find the total.
So what is it? 50 cents, right? So it's $1.25.
Tell us where $1.25 is coming from.
But is it 5 cents or is it 50 cents? Oh yeah, 50 cents times 3. There's gonna be $1.
$1.50.
$1.25.
I'm hearing $1.25 and $1.50. Francis, you want to be our judge?
Wait. Oh wait, I messed up. Yeah, $1.50.
$3.50.
Yeah, $1.50.
So just the 50 cents times 3, we're getting
$1.50.
$1.50.
So it's gonna be $2 plus $1.50.
Mhm.
It'll be
Which I think I already heard you say.
$3.50.
Yeah. So earlier, I heard someone say 2W, and so Francis wrote down 2W. Where'd that W go?
Week.
How many weeks were there?
1.
Just 1, and 2 times 1
2.
it was 2, which is why we got the 2 plus 150. I think Francis deserves some applause for being our writer for that one. How are we feeling with this? A headache. You know, the only way for you to learn, your brain is like a muscle. Just like you go to the gym to work out your muscles, this is like a workout for your brain. It just means you're getting more knowledgeable. But how are we feeling about this one? Really? A little better?
It's alright.
Maybe you noticed, but they're getting a little more challenging as we're going through the lesson too. So I would say this one's a little more challenging just because there was 2 things you had to identify when it came to the operations. There's the addition, which you noticed right away, but then there's also that multiplication part there. There's one last one on your paper. This one is for you to try all by yourself. If you can just do part A for me, we're gonna check in after part A to make sure we're all on the same page. You are close. Think back to some of the stuff we talked about with order of operations, and that might help. So I see 3 letters there. Will you tell me what those 3 letters represent? You were really close the first time. You can put what you had the first time back. There's just something else you need in it. Ooh, what's that line there mean?
This is all together.
Okay, so that's one way you could show it. If you're doing that, you're using that division line there, that 2 would need to be under it instead of next to it. That is definitely one way to show it. The other way, if you wanted to keep it long like that, what did we learn you could use to show something's all together?
Parentheses.
Yeah. So this is good. I'm going to have you write the other way over here. Mhm. All right, I'm gonna have us talk through it. I'm gonna have you start us off. Tell us what you've got written down for the expression.
A plus E divided by X.
And what you were doing a great job of is you were telling us what each of these variables represented. So you said A represents,
Total amount of money for Anna.
yep, so we could say total money.
For Anna.
Yeah, I'm gonna write Anna got. And then E is,
Total amount of money.
total money,
Of money. That's that.
yep, Elsa got. So something like that, that's perfect. What about X?
Total amount of nobody dividing it by.
Number they're dividing it by. Now you used X. I saw something else on your guys' papers. What are we dividing it by?
2.
Where's the 2 coming from?
Because there's only 2 people.
Yeah, it says that we're dividing it between them. We're dividing it between the 2 people. So we actually don't need X there. I can just say divided by 2. So there's 2 variables in this problem. Now when I've written it like this, you said we're dividing it by 2. What are we dividing by 2?
And Elsa.
Because,
What were you going to say?
the same thing as she said.
The same thing. We're dividing.
Because A and E is like all total, they're gonna all make and divided by 2 equals 2 persons in the equation.
Yep. And now you just did something that I don't know if they saw. You said Anna and Elsa, it's what all of them make. You did this. In math, there's a way for us to write this down. How can I show that it's all together? All of that's together. You did this with your hand.
Combined.
How do we show that we're combining it?
Parentheses.
Yeah, Francis has got it. Parentheses are literally the math version of doing this with your hands. If I want to show it's all together, I can do that by putting parentheses around it, showing that we're combining it.
I was like, I think
Go
I
with
did
your
it
gut,
wrong.
yeah. So this is one way you can show it, but we need that because when you just write A plus E divided by 2, what is that saying is getting divided by 2?
You saying that you just doing the how do you call it? The first step is that E divided by 2, then after that plus A.
You get it, yeah. So you're going back to order of operations. If you write it like this, it's just saying E, Elsa's money, is getting divided by 2, and then Anna's is getting added in afterwards. So we need those parentheses to show we've combined first. This is one way to write it. Francis, you figured out the other way?
A plus E. Line underneath it. And then 2.
Yep, and that line underneath it means,
All together.
Divided.
Division.
yep, it means we're dividing. It's kind of like what both of you said. It means we're dividing all together. So if you write it like this is another way to show I'm dividing this entire amount by 2. Either of these is good. Now that we've got the expression, I'm going to have you guys do the last part. This is the part you guys are really, really strong at. They're giving us more information and asking how much did each woman get. And this is going to be where you leave us. Goodbye.